Okay, moving on to the last and final segment of today's show. One of my viewers asked me, Zach, I have a college basketball segment for you. And that question was, if you were to pick one team in each conference that would have missed, and I totally understand, once again, there was no 2020 NCAA tournament, but I'm going to go by bracket matrix and what exactly their projection for the final NCAA tournament was. So the question was, if you were to pick one team in each conference that would have missed the NCAA tournament this year, that is going to make it next year, who is it going to be? And I've been telling you guys, I promise, even though I've been doing mostly NFL draft stuff on this podcast with a couple of college basketball segments mixed in here or there, I've been doing my research on each and every conference. So I've researched every team, and I'm starting to put that top 25 together. And I answered this viewer's question. So I have a team from each conference that I think would have missed the NCAA tournament this year that is going to make it next year. And I did prepare a little bit of talk about each of those teams and how I think they're going to do next season and why exactly I picked them. Also, I found this interesting. In 2019-2020, I was like, all right, like, let's compare. If I would have done this segment last year at this time, would each conference have a qualifier? And the answer was yes. So Creighton, they missed the tournament in 17-18. They definitely would have made it this year. That is your Big East team. In the Big 12, you have West Virginia. They missed the tournament in 17-18. They were a lock to make it in 1920. Let's go to the Pac-12. Arizona, they missed the tournament in 17-18. They definitely would have made it, or in 18-19, they definitely would have made it in 19-20. Let's go to the ACC. You have many different options. How about... There really isn't that one team that stands out in the ACC that missed the 18-19 tournament that would have made it, but I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that the ACC just lost so much talent. We saw Virginia Tech make the tournament in 18-19 and missed, and would obviously have missed this year. Same thing with a Syracuse. Same thing with NC State. I know they didn't end up making it, but the ACC didn't really have much. I think there will be plenty of other teams that fit that category for this upcoming season. If we go to the SEC, there are another bunch of options. So you'll get teams that made the tournament in 18-19 that missed this year. Would have missed this year. How about Mississippi State? They wouldn't have made it. How about Tennessee? How about there should be a couple more. How about Ole Miss? They made the tournament and missed. And then you go to the you go next to the Big Ten. You have just a bunch of other options of teams that missed the tournament, like Rutgers, like Wisconsin, not Wisconsin. You had Rutgers. You had, how about Illinois? They missed and then made it. How about Penn State? They missed and then would have made it. I'd throw Indiana in the conversation. So there have been plenty of teams across college basketball's Power 5 conferences that would have missed that would have missed the 2021 tournament that I think are going to miss that I think are going to make the 2021 tournament. So without further ado, I'm going to give you guys some music and give each of you guys one team in each conference that I think would have missed the NCAA tournament this year that are going to make it next year. Boys, we haven't had some March Madness music in a little while, so let's hit it and let's get this thing going. Starting in the Big East, UConn. The Huskies are going to be in the Big East for this upcoming season, and I'm picking UConn as my Big East team that I think would have missed the tournament this year that is going to make it next year. A couple reasons. Remember the name James Bouknight. This kid took over UConn's starting point guard position last year and was awesome down the stretch. They also bring back Brandon Adams, who is a big contributor. They bring back Josh Carlton, their top big man. They bring in RJ Cole, who is a transfer that could really score. Isaiah Whaley, if you ask most UConn fans, played better towards the back end of last season. Tyler Polley will be healthy. Hopefully Akuk will be healthy. He was their big man last year. He got hurt really late in the season. And yesterday they actually gained some momentum by bringing in center Adama Sanogo, who reclassified to 2020. Most people say he's a little bit of a project, but I just trust Danny Hurley, man. I trust his coaching. I think year 3 for Hurley in stores is going to be very good, and I think UConn is a tournament team next season. Let's go to the Big 12. I'm going to say Oklahoma State. in terms of being a successful NCAA tournament team, right? I think you need a good point guard, a good pure scorer, and a good big man, along with a good coach. Oklahoma State is a team that checks off all those boxes. We all know that Cade Cunningham, consensus top 2-3 recruit, former NBA stud, that surprised a lot of people by announcing that he was going to be attending Stillwater. Yeah, that did surprise a lot of people. But at the same time, I will say this. They have Isaac Likely, who, when he was hurt last season, Oklahoma State was totally lost, and when he was actually in the lineup, really wasn't that bad of a player, and they also bring back Yor Ane, who is their top big man. Oklahoma State was very disappointing last year, and I totally understand that. I actually expected them to be pretty good. I expected them to be a tournament team, and unfortunately, Mike Boynton's squad didn't exceed my expectations. But I think next season, with Cade Cunningham and Likely back, those are two very dynamic players. I actually expect the Cowboys to be a tournament team next season. Let's go to the Pac-12. And we all know that this past season was really a nice bounce-back season for the Pac-12. And there are a number of different teams that I could pick. I didn't want to pick Stanford because that would be the obvious choice, and they really could have made the tournament. They were kind of on the bubble. So I'm going to give you another team. How about Utah? First of all, this season's going to be huge for Larry Kostoiak because he's making a bunch of money, and his team really hasn't lived up to expectations over the last couple of seasons. With the amount of money he's making, Utah should be a tournament team. But they bring back basically everyone, and I remember watching Utah play against Kentucky last season, and they beat them. And I remember saying to myself, okay, I actually think this team could be pretty solid. They bring back a really nice and balanced and experienced starting five. Point guard Rylan Jones, who's this little kid, but he makes plays. Alfonso Plummer is an absolute sniper. This kid hit 9 threes in the Pac-12 tournament before it got canceled against Oregon State. Most Utah fans listening to this podcast know the exact game I'm talking about. And Timmy Allen, the kid is an absolute stud, and he balled out against Kentucky and was one of the main reasons why they won that game. Same with Riley Batton. He's going to be their starting big man. They bring back a couple of key guys off the bench in Mikhail Jontanin, Brandon Carlson, Ian Martinez, and Jackson Brenchley, the freshman. I really like this Utah team, man. I do. And I totally understand that at the top of the Pac-12, it's going to be crowded. UCLA, Arizona, Oregon, Stanford, USC, Arizona State. All of those teams are going to be good, but I think Utah is actually going to be a tournament team next season. Let's go to the SEC. And I totally understand that with this team I'm going to talk about, there's a good chance that they're going to be losing a lot. They already lost their starting point guard in Kyra Lewis, and there's a good chance that they lose 2 more guys in John Petty and Herbert Jones. But I do think Alabama's a tournament team next year. I understand I've always been on the Alabama bandwagon since they got Colin Sexton, but I believe in these guys for a couple reasons. Number one, I love their coach. I love Nate Oates. I know Alabama wasn't great last year, and they were a little disappointing, but for first-year coach, that's going to happen. They bring in Javon Quinterly, the transfer from Villanova, and I understand the last time we saw him on a college basketball floor, it really didn't turn out well. I'll give you a name to remember for Alabama. Jaden Shackelford. I think this kid could be all SEC next year. He's only a sophomore. He was awesome down the stretch. And they bring in Jordan Brunner, the grad transfer from Yale, that I think could also make a big impact. And they get healthy. 2 guys, James Rojas and Juwan Gary, that couldn't play last year because they got injured in the preseason. And they bring in a very good freshman in Josh Primo. I think if John Petty and Herbert Jones both come back to Alabama, and I understand with Petty, it feels like he's a guy that's been in school literally forever. He's going to be a senior this year. I think Alabama could be a top 25 team next year and at the top of the SEC. When you look at the SEC, the one team I love that I also could have said for this list is Tennessee. And I get it. The Vols are definitely a team I could have talked about, but I've spoke a lot about Rick Barnes on this podcast before. And, Kentucky, they don't have a big man right now. Auburn is very young. Florida, I will never pick as a top team in the SEC as long as Mike White is their coach. It looks like LSU could be losing Trendon Watford. I think Alabama next season actually has a really good shot to not only make the tournament, but be very, very successful. Let's go to the ACC, and this is kind of an obvious one, but I'm going to say North Carolina. The thing that not a lot of people are going to remember about the 2019-2020 version of the UNC Tar Heels is that even though they were very bad and it was their worst season ever and they literally finished last in the ACC, they weren't that far off. We remember when Cole Anthony came back during the middle portion of the ACC schedule, they should have beaten Duke. They should have beaten Notre Dame. And they just lost so many heartbreaking games. It was crazy. But going back to this 2021 UNC team, I'm going to be very fascinated to see how exactly Roy Williams, manages his rotations, because he has a point guard in Caleb Love. I understand he's a freshman, but he's really his only option there. I think you start Leaky Black at the 2, which I don't love to begin with because he's not really a shooter, even though he provides you with good size. And they have Armando Bacot and Garrison Brooks, two very productive big men, both coming back. I love Garrison Brooks. I think he's a star. I think he is one of the more underrated players in all of college basketball. And Bacot was fine last year, for a freshman top, ranked in the recruiting trail where he was. I think he was fine. But here's the thing. They bring in two McDonald's All-American type centers in Day'Ron Sharpe and Walker Kessler. Can you play? We all know that Roy Williams always loves to play a big lineup, right? But my concern with this UNC team is, can you play a lineup of Leaky Black at the 2, who can't really shoot, Armando Bacot at the 3, Garrison Brooks at the 4, and Day'Ron Sharpe at the 5. To be honest, I don't know if you could play that lineup. It's too big and your spacing would suck, even though Roy Williams likes to play bigger lineups. So I'm very curious to see how Roy does with this. He has some guards on the bench he could use, Anthony Harris, and then freshman Puff Johnson and RJ Davis. But this UNC team is not only going to need some shooting, they're going to need some playmaking as well. And I'm very curious to see how exactly they end up next season. And then finally, in the Big Ten, I'm going to say Purdue. And I understand the Boilers, when we look at them, right? They're a team that very easily could have made the tournament last year. They were very up and down, and understandably so, when you're in such a tough league like the Big Ten. But at the same time, I will say this. If they could bring back, Nojel Eastern currently is declared for the draft right now, and I understand he isn't great. But his defense is very good. His rebounding is very good. He has good size. And even though he's a senior right now, I understand we're probably never going to see that big jump that we all expected to eventually see from his offensive game. But here's the thing. When you look at the way Purdue currently stands and their roster is set, I don't necessarily know if you're going to need him to do that much on offense, because they bring back a decent amount of offensive production. Sasha Stevanovic, he's probably going to be their leading scorer. He was awesome, especially in games in Mackey Arena, and he could really play. We all know about Travion Williams. That was primarily the reason why Matt Harms decided to transfer. So those are going to be their top 3 if Eastern comes back: Williams, Stefanovic, and Eastern. They also bring back Eric Hunter and Aaron Wheeler. These were 2 guys that played in the same recruiting class, and Wheeler wasn't very good last year. Hunter was. But Aaron Wheeler's freshman year, he actually was very productive. I think last year, Purdue had a little bit of trouble sorting out their rotation and sorting out their pieces. They didn't really know what big man exactly they should have played, whether Harms or Williams at what time. They had a bunch of wings like Jihad Proctor, like Stefanovic, like Wheeler, like Hunter, and Matt Painter was kind of in a tough spot because he wanted to see Aaron Wheeler on the floor as much as possible, but you already had Eric Hunter at that wing spot along with Stefanovic and Proctor. I think this year, when you look at Purdue's roster, they should roll out Eastern at the point if he comes back, or if he doesn't, Isaiah Thompson, the little brother of PJ Thompson, was actually also very productive last season in limited time. I wouldn't be shocked if Eastern's struggle continue if he jumps Nojel as the starting point guard and Purdue rolls out a lineup of either, once again, Thompson or Eastern at the 1, Stefanovic at the 2, Hunter at the 3, Wheeler, and you pray his game improves at the 4, and Travion Williams at the 5. If you had that group, right, with a guy like Matt Painter as your coach, I think you're set to have a very successful season and make the NCAA tournament, even in a tough Big Ten.